This review contains spoilers. All gameplay footage in this video is the work of PB Horror Gaming. If you'd like my cursory thoughts without spoilers, skip to the timestamp on screen. 2K's BioShock is a beloved game from 2007. Some of you watching may have played it before, or even when it first came out if you're old enough. But I offer a new perspective. I played BioShock for the first time, completely blind, in 2026. How does it hold up? Let's find out. When I review games, I consider story, gameplay, and replayability. My previous review on Kona didn't have replayability factored in, because the developers clearly designed it as a one-time experience. But BioShock makes an attempt at all three of these, so I'll discuss all of them. BioShock takes place in 1960, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You play as Jack, a man whose personality and lore aren't that important to the story, at least at first, but I digress. The game opens with him on an airplane, which crashes near a lighthouse while at sea. He survives the wreck and swims to the lighthouse, only to find that it leads to an entire submerged city by the name of Rapture, founded and controlled by one Andrew Ryan, who had it built because he was sick of basically every other form of government in existence. Time for a history lesson. Years before Jack landed, one of Rapture's scientists, Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum, discovered a species of sea slug that naturally produced a fluid which could alter one's DNA, providing immense regenerative properties and genetic mutations. Dubbing it Adam, she decided to forcibly insert these slugs into local young girls, which apparently made the Adam production much more efficient. These girls came to be known as Little Sisters, and they roamed the buildings of Rapture, finding corpses and extracting any used Adam that might be in there for reuse. Because, by the way, a businessman named Frank Fontaine saw an opportunity to sell Adam to the general public. However, his new private army of Adam addicts, dubbed Splicers, would frequently attack the Little Sisters to get their next fix. To solve this, he commissioned the creation of Big Daddies to guard them. Big Daddies were grossly mutated humans, essentially armored hulks that attacked anyone who came too close to their assigned little sister. More people got addicted, and it started to get out of control. Andrew Ryan finally had to acknowledge that his control of the city was slipping. A political civil war of sorts then ensued, Fontaine versus Ryan. Ryan won, and Fontaine was killed, but a new rebel going by Atlas rose shortly after. Meanwhile, Dr. Tenenbaum started feeling incredibly guilty about her prior lack of ethics and chose to instead safeguard girls from being turned into little sisters. All of that was before you entered Rapture. When you do, you are quickly contacted by Atlas and slowly debriefed on the city as a whole, as well as Andrew Ryan's greed and general evil doings. Atlas has you carry out many tasks for him that are all ultimately related to diminishing Ryan's influence and saving Atlas's family, as he claims Ryan kidnapped them. However, when you finally reach Ryan, your entire worldview takes the sharpest 180-degree turn in gaming history. You are not Jack as you remember. You are the 4-year-old, but artificially hyper-grown son of Ryan himself. Ryan reveals that Atlas has literally been controlling your mind using the phrase "would you kindly" before all of his major instructions, a trigger which was coded into you as a baby. So essentially, Atlas has been exploiting you for his own personal gain this whole time. Ryan then proceeds to invoke the "would you kindly" command to make you kill him. Why does Ryan want to die? It's very complicated, but it basically has to do with his realization that Rapture is fried and his philosophical convictions. You have to play the game to fully get it. Alright, if you thought that was insane, get ready. Atlas then reveals to you, now that he's incumbent to the throne of Rapture, that there is no Atlas. He's been Frank Fontaine the whole time. He faked his own death. There was never a kidnapped family. Never a mysterious but helpful guide, and worst of all, never an Irish accent. Just betrayal and politics. Fontaine goes crazy after this. He injects himself with a bunch of Adam and tries to extinguish you using the would you kindly phrase once again, but you find an antidote in an abandoned lab that had been synthesized for this exact purpose long ago. You arrive at his lair eventually and fight him, extracting Adam from him via a syringe a little sister handed you earlier. He is jumped by a pack of little sisters while trying to orifarm a speech and gets killed for real this time. If the player chose to harvest the little sisters they came across for Adam, the ending depicts Jack taking over Rapture for himself as a powerful mutant before moving on to attempting to conquer the world. If the player instead chose to rescue the little sisters they came across, the ending depicts Jack and the little sisters going on to lead normal civilian lives, finally at peace and free from the corruption of Rapture. Wow, this is good stuff. Lots of themes you could spend hours talking about relating to greed, power, ethics, you name it, but let's cut to the chase. The plot twist in this game is one of the few in all of media that doesn't feel shoehorned in or there just for the sake of being there. You feel genuinely betrayed, at least I did. The realization that all you've done so far has been for nothing except to rinse and repeat the faceless tycoon at the helm, it's insane. And looking back, the game drops hints. There are posters on walls all over with the phrase, "Who is Atlas?" written on them. His family members, allegedly named Patrick and Myra, fictional characters borrowed from a random stage production by the artist Sandra Cohen. It was all a lie. You were tricked, plain and simple. Speaking more technically, the player agency with the ending was something really revolutionary for the time. Nowadays, with games like Undertale and Red Dead Redemption 2 fleshing that concept out, it seems so trivial, but BioShock did indeed walk so they could run. Now, to close this very long segment, my one critique with the story is that it can be presented quite confusingly at times. Most of the apocryphal stuff, and even a lot of the very important stuff, is delivered through audio diaries that aren't even mandatory to pick up and listen to. Once you've done your extensive research into the game's wiki to make sure you've got it all straight, though, it is a really beautiful narrative. Let's start with the first real negatives, in my opinion. First, the gunplay, firearm mechanics are quite dated. It certainly says something when I had more success hip-firing enemies as opposed to using the game's clunky aiming system. In addition, you can't move backward when parsing your loadout. If you accidentally go past the gun you intended to use, you have to cycle all the way back around. Overall, it's just stiff. It doesn't flow like modern FPS titles do. Of course, it's an old game, but this is still a deterrent worth mentioning to a modern player base. Aside from the combat, much of the game is filled with repetitive fetch questing. You're always getting some serum or cluster or module or vector or override key or any other video gamey buzzword. And I wouldn't be that irked if there weren't one or two parts where there's actual fun game design. There's a part where you need a little sister to enter a series of locked doors through crawl spaces you can't fit through, so you need to dress, talk, and act like a big daddy to get her to trust you. While running through the sequence by her side, splicers try to attack her and you have to fend them off as if you were a real big daddy. That's so cool! Like, you're capable of having good original ideas, just do it more often! Okay. Let's stop hating and get to some positives. I really like the customization in BioShock. There are 4 different classes of gene modification you can get, and multiple slots for each class to test out abilities and see which ones you like. It lets you create a build that fits your playstyle. You can also upgrade your guns with various modifications to damage, fire rate, recoil. All in all, a huge thumbs up in this department. To close this segment, let's talk about the atmosphere. The graphics in this game are really solid for the time, which helps immerse you in the world and the story. Rapture is a creepy place. It feels alive, yet dead at the same time. There are so many people between splicers, big daddies, little sisters, and the various characters you come across, but with none of them do you establish what feels like genuine connection. The vast majority are self-serving or completely entranced to some programmed goal. It's lonely because you're the only one motivated by empathy and a desire to escape, at least if you're doing the rescue little sisters ending. There is only one solace, one helper that isn't trying to deceive you or kill you. The vending machines. They are a relaxing hug in the darkness. Sure, they just spit out pre-recorded jingles and cheery phrases, but their aid is as authentic as it gets in the dregs of the human race. There's achievements, yeah, but every game has those. I'm talking more about new experiences. Are there any? And the answer is yes. As I mentioned before, multiple endings lends itself to a second playthrough by default, but in addition to that, you can also select New Game Plus, which restarts the game but with everything you had at the end of the last run. This lets you tinker around from the beginning and try out a new build if you want, or ease the pain of Survivor difficulty, which when coupled with an ability to disable Vita Chambers, makes for a very solid challenge mode of sorts. Replaying a story game will never be able to emulate the first time, but they did a really good job adding that bit of extra content in. Overall, I would absolutely recommend BioShock. The story is very gripping, the world of Rapture is teeming with lore, and the gameplay issues don't come close to ruining the experience. I gave Kona a numerical score, but I'm discarding that format for this review and any future ones. Just know that I thought, all things considered, it was really, really good.